Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Salman and I'm a tech product and innovation expert based out of Bangkok, and I'm currently in the middle of reinventing my life. In this channel, I talk about personal transformation and how to accelerate your learning for a better future. In today's video, I'll be talking about a diagnostic framework that I've been using for almost 12 years now to reflect on my years that's passing by or almost any other things in life. And I will also talk about why I believe 2021 potentially is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us all to really finally reinvent ourselves. So let's dive into it. So let's introduce the diagnostic framework. It's a very simple framework, but most people don't use it, and hence they don't really get the advantage of using it in a more everyday life situations whenever they need to, whether it's in your personal life, in your businesses, or wherever. So the framework is observe, interpret, and intervene. Just 3 steps, and you keep repeating in a continuous loop. It's very easy to understand if I give an example. Imagine you're standing in front of a traffic signal and waiting to jaywalk the street on the other side as you see the traffic signal turning green. Now you're on your phone and you're waiting for your peripheral view to tell you the signal has turned green. As you see the signal turning green, you observe the green color of the signal and you interpret that it's your time for you to start walking. And as you start interpreting that, your brain processes it and tells your body to start moving forward. But what can happen is that if you really haven't carefully observed your environment better, the outcome of that walk can be completely different. If you are on a lucky day, you'll be crossing the jaywalk without having any issues. But if you haven't observed your surroundings, if you haven't collected enough data points from your own environment, then you might potentially not have seen potentially a fast-moving car that was coming towards you, who was hoping to cross the signal within that yellow signal time and ended up hitting you and falling into an accident yourself. So here's the beauty of this framework. It's about observing the set of data points that you have all around you and keep observing for getting more insights. As you get the insights in your interpretation, you decide what you want to do with that interpretation as you intervene. And once you intervene, just because you've intervened, most people stop looking at things after they've intervened. But what you need to do here is really start observing again, what have you intervened and what actually happened as a result of your intervention. Did something move? Did something change? Did something really get affected because of your intervention? Was it a desired outcome, or didn't you get something that you really wanted? And then based on that observation again of that intervention, you decide on your new interpretations and you make your next intervention. And hence it's a consistent, continuous loop that you keep on doing it as you plan on doing whatever things you want to do in life. And that is the diagnostic framework for you to use. What I'll do right now, I'm going to break down this diagnostic framework into my own life and showing how I reflect on the 2020 using this diagnostic framework, something you can also do for yourself. Now, if you're interested to really get into a little bit of work for yourself, feel free to pick up any pen and pencil, your iPad, whichever is useful for you to start writing, and maybe you can start walking through your own diagnostic framework, use of this framework in your own personal life right now. It can be any current event that you're going through. It can be something that you're doing for the whole of 2020 to reflect on this, whatever suits you. So if you're ready, let's dive into it. Now, since this is a reflection of my year 2020 using this diagnostic framework, I would like to also introduce something that I consider to be as the foundation for our life. Assuming that you have your shelter, which is, you have a place to live and your spiritualism is figured out, then you probably have 5 more things that you need to get sorted out in order to have a meaningful life. And to me, in no particular order, they're your physical health, your relationships, your job, work, whatever that you do to make a living, your education, and last but not the least, which probably is the one that most people don't even recognize enough, is your mental health. Now, if all of this are really in the right balance, you then eventually will probably have a much more meaningful life. And that can probably also help you live not only a happy life, but also a life full of meanings and intentions. So keep that in mind. We're going to walk through these 5 different pillars as I walk you through this framework as to how I reflect on my year 2020 before planning for my year 2021. So let's get into this. Reflecting on the year 2020 is probably a very tough thing to do because most of us didn't quite have a good time, I'm sure. And it is still giving us a lot of people a lot of difficulties as we're navigating out of it. But what I would like to do is really connect all of us with something that probably is more relatable. I'm going to break down the year 2020 in 3 parts. So the first part is the pre-COVID times, which is something when the world didn't even got hit by the COVID itself. The world as it was. It's probably the first 2 to 3 months for most of us. In the part 2, which is the bigger chunk of the year, which is during the COVID times. And the last part is probably where we are now as we're looking ahead into the future in a post-COVID world of how do you want to operate ourselves, how do you want to maneuver ourselves into the uncertainties and towards a better future. Now, to do this in a more meaningful way, as we use this diagnostic framework, what I'll do is I'll take those 5 pillars of life that I mentioned earlier to really apply those into this diagnostic framework to show you how I was operating throughout these different phases, how I observed my situations, what sort of interpretations that I've done, and as I'm looking forward, how do I really am planning to intervene based on those framework insights. So let's walk into it. To draw the year in review using the diagnostic framework, we first need to apply this framework with the 3 phases of the year 2020 as I just explained earlier, the pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID phases. And once plotted, we identify the POD, the point of diagnosis, the item, the topic that we would like to go a deep dive on. Now, this is not limited to the 5 life components that I mentioned, but for today's video, I will only focus on some of them. Now, as I look into my physical health and looking backward when I observed the pre-COVID time, I can easily reflect that I was extremely ignorant about my health overall. I was not paying attention to my health. I was also not listening to my body. Now, as a result, when the COVID hit the world and we were all worried and concerned about what was going on with regards to our health, I observed that something was not right. And as an immediate interpretation of that was that I was worried and scared because I didn't take care of my health before. So with the COVID in place, I started worrying even more. Now, the immediate intervention as a result of this observation and interpretation was to go get a health check done, start exercising, start trying eating a little healthy, and take vitamin supplements so that we can have a better antibody. Now, as humans we are, I spend the next few months trying to do this, but not really doing it the right way. So as I reflect back again using the framework, I observe that I'm still not feeling well. I'm having sleep issues, a lot of gut problems, and I was absolutely frustrated with my health. Given this was the post-COVID time, I could tell that all of this was not happening because of any illness that was inside me, because I've already gone through the doctors. But what actually happened is the interpretation of that is that I lacked the commitment and discipline. Now, based on these 2 insights, that lacking of the commitment and the discipline, I created what is the most important part of this framework is the action. It is the action that will be driven based on the data and the insights collected using the framework. And a simple action that I prepared for myself is to make a steady plan of making healthy living as part of my habit. Now, I still don't know how much successful I will be into doing this, but the way I have made this intervention is through a lot of activities around it as well. I started reading a lot of books on habit building, listening to podcasts, and watching lots of videos. And with these videos and these contents, I now learn more about how to really make sure that this action required is much more solid intervention than just a trial and error only for me. Let's have another example. Let's diagnose the education or the continuous learning, something we all hold very close to ourselves. If I reflect the pre-COVID time, I was not having any additional learning as part of my structured learning process outside the on-the-job training that I was getting. and which is quite scary. And hence, I actually at that point of time decided that in the beginning of 2020, I will take some new courses, some trainings, will go to some programs abroad so that I can well equip myself with some more good learning curves. But as the COVID hit the world, something that was in the plan completely got disrupted. So I observed my situation with the education or continuous learning. And what I noticed is that I was overwhelmed with what was happening in the world around us. I was overwhelmed with the world rapidly changing due to the COVID around me. And as an interpretation of that, I realized that I needed to adopt to the new normal for learning. I was worried and overwhelmed because I couldn't think of starting this new habit of learning in a platform that I haven't considered before. So as an immediate intervention from that insights, I started taking online courses and preparing a game plan. Now, again, we are very good at procrastinating and not following through the ideas or the plans that we do, and it didn't do any different when it comes to my case. I observed again in a post-COVID world in this end of the year, and as I reflect, I see that I was failing to keep up with the plan and feeling really, really miserable as a result of it. And as a simple interpretation of that is that I was not challenging my comfort zone. The reality is I have committed my intention, but I haven't started acting upon that commitment. And as a result, I was not being able to get that same learning curve that I was hoping to achieve. So based on this newfound insights and interpretation, I have decided to intervene by finding a platform with a purpose that can help make learning a daily habit for me as opposed to a chore or something that I have to achieve. And after spending a lot of time, I actually ended up launching this YouTube channel as a way, as an outlet, as a platform for me to really put myself out there, to really start learning the things that would really help me make this part of my habit eventually. And if I could share one more, a bonus item for diagnosis, fast forwarding directly into the post-COVID time, we always care about our financial situations, our financial security. And our goal in life is to become financially independent. And for me, things haven't been that good because I am really, really a terrible personal financial manager. I really don't do a good job in really understanding the finances better. At the same time, I end up always failing to really perform a good job in managing my own finances. So when I reflected using this framework of my personal financial situations, what I observed is that I don't have a secondary source of income still. So the COVID came and showed us how insecure we are and how uncertain the world is, and yet I don't have a secondary source of income. And a clear interpretation of that is that I'm fucked. And there's just no better interpretation of that. And as a result of this observation and the interpretation, the only intervention that a human can do is simply to go on a nearby mall and buy a $3,500 camera and lens and start a YouTube channel. Well, no, don't do that. That's lame. So with that, now you have a full summary of how to really reflect on your years that has gone by, and also how do you plan on making your next intervention as you're looking into the year ahead. And not just for the years. Think about your job, think about your personal decisions in life, think about a situation that's happening right now that just happened a few days ago, or even from a long past. You can really apply this particular framework to really observe what you haven't observed before, interpret with more than one set of decision points for yourself, and really make a meaningful intervention. And even if it's not the best one, you can go back and repeat and keep iterating your decisions, your interventions, and continuously getting better at it. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider doing so. I wish you all a very happy, healthy, and a very meaningful year 2021. Until then, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.